Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to have Dr. Aviva Legatt. She's the founder of Ivy Insight and the author of a new book, Get Real and Get In, How to Get into the College of Your Dreams by Being Your Authentic Self. So, Dr. Legatt, welcome to Write with Impact.
Thank you so much, Glenn. It's great to be here.
That's great. I've been following your writing and your videos on LinkedIn and elsewhere, your podcast for quite a while now. And, you offer a lot of really great practical advice to students, mainly high school students, trying to figure out where they should go to college and how they should go through the process. So that's one thing I'd love to talk to you about, because you've just written a new book about that. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I'd be happy to talk about that. So I've been, very honored to serve students over the last 7 years. It was a pipe dream of mine to consult with students on the college admissions process since my own application process back when I was in high school. So at the time in high school, I was a stressed out kid and I was in this very high pressure environment. So I felt like I had to focus down on some kind of goal, something concrete. So I picked out NYU as my top choice college. I put a lot of pressure on myself and I ultimately got pneumonia right before applications were due, which was a rough time. So I know I've been talking about the stress of the process, but what also happened in parallel was I became a better person, a leader. I became more focused on what I wanted to do and I matured through the process. So I really feel that the college application process has the power to transform based on my own experience. And so I wrote Get Real and Get In because I wanted to help folks like myself who were, high achieving, high stress, high pressure kind of kids and their parents. I wanted to give them some concrete advice on what to do in this high stakes process, how to reflect on who they are and what they want, and to get inspired by stories from thought leaders. I have folks that I've interviewed here like Adam Grant, Thomas Kail, Director Hamilton, Henry Louis Gates, Joy Clark. So a ton of really great people and leaders. And, they all have really interesting college stories and stories about the kind of pivot points or choice points that they had as they progressed in their young adult life. So it's an honor to share this book with everybody and today with you.
That's great. Thanks. This is a writing podcast, but a lot of what I talk about with my guests is storytelling, because that's really, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, we're telling a story in one way or another. And I think that is, to some extent, the essence of what you're trying to help your clients and your readers do, is to the number of things. I'd rather hear it from you. It's better if you phrase it, but trying to identify, what story to tell. And it's not just a story. It's not fiction. It's based on, on their personality, on their interests, on their passions, on their goals and their experience and their accomplishments. So I would love to hear a little bit about that. If you want to go and dive into, some of the core elements of what you share in your book, the advice you share in your book, and then at some point, whenever you're ready, love to transition a little bit into the writing of the essay with a capital ESSAY, because I believe it is an important aspect, and I'd love to hear from you, how important you think it is. I think I saw in your book you do sort of rank, the level of importance that admissions directors place on various elements of the application. So I'd rather hear it from you. How important is the essay? I believe it is, but I'd love to hear from you. And then also a little bit about the process for actually writing and editing and proofreading that essay before it goes in. So over to you.
Sure, thanks. I also just want to mention that, back when I was on the committee, the essays always did matter to an extent, but what was even more important was what people did before they wrote that essay. So an essay in a vacuum is not an effective application material. Sure. However, the culmination of your experiences can be either squander through that essay if it's not done well, or really add to it. So I would say in terms of overall importance of the essay, it has become increasingly important over the last year or so, because many colleges have gone test optional. And side note, I always say it's optional but preferred, but even so, colleges need to rely on qualitative data now to make their decisions, more so than they had before, because a lot of students aren't submitting scores. So the essay really does matter, and it's important to learn how to tell your story in a way that compels someone emotionally who's reading it on the other end, because that's ultimately what's going to get an admissions officer to advocate for you, is if they like you and they want to see you succeed at their college. So writing with impact is super important to underscoring the narrative about why the student would contribute positively to that university. If you can't write with that impact, then your application may fall flat. So how important is the essay? It's always been important, and it's becoming increasingly more important. So it's really important to, before you even write the essay though, to really reflect on your goals, who you are, what you want to do, and how that college will help you get there. And a lot of people fail to research colleges in an in-depth way to really understand what college can do for them. So one important aspect of writing with impact is researching the audience of who's reading your essay. What are they looking for? How do they want to advance their goals, and how can you help them advance their goals? So it's really important for anyone applying to, whether it's college or MBA, to really get clear about what you want and why that college can help you get there.
Right. And you mentioned researching what your audience wants. And how do you do that exactly?
So I talk about this in my book. And when you think about college admission and someone gets acceptance letter or rejection letter, a lot of people take that news personally, whether it's the happy news or the sad news. And I say that these decisions are not personal at all, whether they are the positive decision or the negative decision. Your admissions decision is reflective of the college or MBA program's priorities, and not so much about you. And obviously, you can't be a slouch. It's not like they're just gonna, pick people off the street because they go to this high school or that. But just to say that if you don't help the institution meet one of its goals, then you're not going to be a strong candidate, even if overall your performance is great. You have a lot of impressive extracurricular activities and so on. So the way to discern what the priorities are, I have this in my book. One way is to look at the college's motto. So that is a short statement that reflects the school's culture. So some schools, like our alma mater, focus on, Wharton's motto is knowledge for action. So they're looking for folks who want to make a social impact and who want to deepen and apply their learning to create positive returns in many ways. And other colleges have different mottos, and so the motto is just like a snapshot of what that culture is like, and it can get someone curious to learn more. And so another great way to understand the college's priorities is to talk to people who go there now, to understand what their experience is like. And another way is to talk with a resource center that you envision taking advantage of when you go to that college. For example, if you're a writer and you want to tap into the writing resources of that college when you get there, you should, as a prospective student, reach out to that writing center now, understand what their programs are, talk to somebody there. That allows you as a student to, number one, make sure the school is the right fit for you. Number two, you can use your personal experience interacting with these folks in your personal statement or supplement essay. And number three, ideally, if you can connect with someone at the college, they can, perhaps give you a formal or informal endorsement. And it just creates a positive return all around when you have that personal connection.
That's great. And did you mention alumni?
I didn't, but that's another group, students and alumni. So students, alumni, faculty, staff. Sometimes I have folks who pitch faculty members to participate in research or to just talk to them about their research. So my advice, if you're going to connect with someone at the university, is not that admissions offices are bad to connect with. You should absolutely, be on the radar in general, but in terms of finding out why the school fits you and then being able to internalize that and write it with impact, it's really about finding those people and those resources that you would really take advantage of when you go to that college.
Right. That's very helpful. What about, I mean, I know a lot of your book is about really trying to understand, trying to identify what your interests are, what you really want to do. So maybe if you want to dive a little bit into that, because that's going to be maybe the core, the heart of the essay.
Absolutely. So, and this exploration can happen at any point in high school or before. What I like to call, and I didn't come up with this in time for the book, but I have a newer framework for thinking about this. And so what I encourage people to do before they apply is to find what I call their college admissions X factor. So X factor stands for experience, expertise, and exponentialism. So experience is when you get that initial exposure to a subject that you are interested in, curious about, and then you get some data feedback for yourself. Do I want to continue with this? Do I want to try something else? And so on. So assuming you want to continue with this activity, you want to go to the next level, which is expertise. That's when you find a niche area in whatever this topic is, and you go deeper. For example, you could do a research project around, let's say, you're interested in language, you could do a linguistics research project and talk about, learn about one aspect of language through that research. Then let's say you have that expertise, then the next layer is exponentialism. So that refers to an overall impact and a positive return you would have for the greater good. And that sounds very abstract. So here's what I mean by that. So let's say you're that person who has this linguistics research paper. You then decide to create some kind of linguistics professional or professional student organization, or you build a linguistics related app that other people can download and you have a team, or you decide to write a book like one of my students did and form a peer group to help you with that process and publish that on Amazon. That's when you get exponentialism. And that refers to when you can impact many other people with your expertise and experience. So it's not just about what you're gaining, but it's about what you're offering to other people.
Right. Those are tremendous accomplishments. To what extent, I mean, you've seen a lot of different, you work with a lot of different clients, a lot of different students. To what extent do you find that, they come to you with those ideas themselves, and then there may be some, and for legitimate reasons that, maybe they've been led that way or advised that way, maybe through, parents or teachers or, other advice that they've been given. I mean, if you understand what I'm saying, I mean, to what extent, will admissions counselors sort of be able to, really identify that, oh, this is an authentic, project that they've worked on and maybe initiated and is passionate about, versus, it's been a little bit more guided and helped. And is that necessarily a bad thing, if you know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. So there's, there are definitely, I think people's flags do raise when there's something that's just like so impressive that you say, is this even real?
Right.
So my advice on that, and some people really do some extraordinary things with or without their parents. My advice on that is to gather as much external social proof as you can through letters of recommendation. If you can get press on what you're doing, get publications on what you're doing, that substantiates what you've done as the student. I've met with, sometimes a student will come to me and their resume is just so nice looking, and it's just amazing in terms of what they've done. And I'm always like, tell me about, how you got interested in this. What was your process for starting this? And then I can kind of tell pretty quickly if it was mom or dad, or if they actually did it. Because if they can't explain themselves, then it's probably like they're along for somebody else's ride. So I would definitely caution parents also to allow your child to have that impact and support them in whatever they want to do, but don't make sure you don't do their extracurriculars for them, because ultimately it doesn't benefit anybody. And it may get you in, but once your child gets in, then they may struggle.
So Dr. Legatt, so let's talk about the essay itself. As I said, I've written many of those myself in the past, and I've been through that process. It was a long time ago, so maybe you could tell me a little bit about how the process has changed since you and I have gone through it. I think I went through it way before you did, by the way. Or the process hasn't really changed. I think you did say, though, a few minutes ago when we first started, that it is getting slightly more important because of tests. A lot of students are not obligated to, and therefore not submitting tests. So the essay does take on slightly higher weight. But let's talk a little bit about the process. How do you how do you do that, and how do you write an effective college essay?
So in terms of the process and how it's changed, the core of the process has remained the same for many years, which is, there's an essay, you may or may not have to submit your test scores, there's an application form, and so on. You need letters of recommendation. However, these days, young people are applying to more colleges than ever because of the advent of the electronic applications versus paper. People are tending to go away from home more for colleges, so that also broadens the type of school and therefore the number of schools that somebody might apply to. So that's one of the reasons why college has become more competitive, is that people are applying to more colleges and there are more competitors per college. So back when you or I were applying, maybe people were applying to, I don't know, 5 schools, 10 schools, and now they're applying to 20, 25 schools. So it's, and I don't advocate that, by the way. I always say no more than 15. But people are sort of, treating it like a lottery ticket, which is not necessarily the right approach. You want to really have a personalized approach by the college. So this intuitively, if you're applying for a job and you submit 50 random applications and don't adjust much, you're probably not going to get a lot of good feedback about that unless somebody's desperate. But if you put in a very personalized application where you have names that you can drop, stories you can share about that college, then your application is going to be a lot more impactful. Even if you submit less, your chances of getting admitted are actually higher. So it's an important thing for students and families to be very mindful of what choices they're making and make sure those choices are well researched. And I know we didn't go into the whole framework around school priorities. I mentioned the motto, mission statement, talking to folks at the college, also looking at where donations are made. And there are some resources you can look at to see, who's donating money in, let's say, entrepreneurship, for example. Where is that money being donated? So you can infer from that they're going to take in more students with that entrepreneurial background. So that's a little bit about how the process has changed and where you have to keep your mind in terms of the essay. So you have to really focus it on yourself, who you are, what you want, your goals relative to that college. The other thing I want to share about the essays itself is you have to recognize also the purpose of each of the essays that are on the application. So back when you and I were applying, there was probably one essay, and now there are multiple essays. So you have to really be mindful of interpreting the question and what its purpose is. So for the main personal statement, you want to talk about a story that says something about your character. So you want to show who you are from a small event or an anecdote, something that you can share that's not necessarily, an academic related story, but something that demonstrates your character. And the college will use that to infer how you might contribute from a personality standpoint. The other kind of essay is a supplement essay, and those are the college specific essays. So while the topics of those essays can vary, many colleges have a why this school essay. So in that essay, this is sort of, your chance to be, make an emotional and persuasive case about why that college, and here's who you spoke to, and here's the major they have, and here's all the reasons why it fits you based on your evidence of your own experience and how that's led you to where you are today. So again, if I have to sum up the essay, it's knowing the purpose of the essay, whether it's a character story or a persuasive one, and then also who the audience is on the other end.
Right. And I believe you said you were an admissions counselor at Wharton. Is that right, at one point?
That's right. I was on the freshman and transfer admissions committees. I oversaw pre-college programs and ran different academic initiatives for the school.
Right. So just give us a little peek into the admissions office at Wharton slash, other schools, top schools. What is it like in that job, and what are you seeing, and what are you hoping to see? What do you not like to see? And then what actually happens behind closed doors? Because that is probably, I don't know how to describe it, but sort of like the Wizard of Oz, was hiding behind the curtain. People are very intensely curious, like who's creating all this magic, and having all this power, exercising all this power over the fates of so many innocent aspiring students wanting to get into these schools. What is it like on the other side, in other words?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say the best recount of that question is, pick up Jeff Salango's book, Who Gets In and Why. He did essentially kind of a sociological study of several admissions offices and saw how they made decisions. And the process that he describes is very similar to what I saw when I was there. So in terms of the valuation selection, the sort of, sculpting of the class and so on. So, it's a complicated question that I don't want to, boil down to just a couple things on the call, but
Sure.
I would just give, big props to Jeff Salango's book and say, if somebody's interested in that topic, that does a great job recalling what that looks like exactly, and what that's like on the inside. In terms of my own experience, I would say it was both heartening and disheartening, because it's heartening because you see all these great kids come through and they're so accomplished, and you wonder, I wasn't doing that much back then compared to what a lot of these kids are doing. And I mean, some of them are more accomplished than your average senior citizen by 17 years old. It's pretty amazing. And so it's heartening to see all these stories, but then it's disheartening because, again, there is no silver bullet. Some people get in, some people don't, and there are a lot of qualified people who don't get through the doors. And sometimes an admissions decision would go the way I thought it would, sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes you really like somebody and they don't get in, or you think somebody's not that stellar compared to somebody else, but they do get in. So it's very interesting. I'm glad that somebody sort of did a social science approach to studying it, because it's really if you're going to look at the process, it's really like a team dynamics question of like who's in the room, how the conversation goes, how that may drive somebody's candidacy forward or backwards, who else they saw that day. So part of it is what the student does before they get in. Part of it is, again, the college's priorities and the chance you have in that dynamic in that room when the decision is made.
Right. Understand. I was an alumni interviewer for Wharton for many years, and so I've never been in the admissions office. I've never worked for them, but I do know it is. I met a lot of very talented, smart people in my interviews, and not all of them were accepted. Some were, but not all of them were. So it's anyway. That's beyond me. But what at what point should students start thinking about this? I mean, I'm sure you may have parents that are starting at elementary school. Some may start in middle school. Some may say, oh, well, wait until you actually hit high school. When I'm sure you don't advise elementary school kids. when should people start preparing for this major milestone?
Absolutely. Well, I wouldn't say they should talk about college in elementary school, but I would encourage parents to observe their child's learning and development from an early age, whether from when they're born through college, because how people learn is a huge part of how they succeed, how they develop, how they internalize and make good or don't on their struggle. And all of that ultimately will drive what their opportunities are for college. So I have recently gone into the world of learning differences. My son has a learning difference, and I've discovered that there are these great skills called that you can help people build from a young age called executive functioning skills. And it sounds very fancy, but it's actually all about helping people prioritize their time, prioritize their tasks, and figure out how to plan ahead so that they can focus on their best priorities. So those are great skills for people to have, whether they're 3 years old or they're 22 or older. So I would definitely encourage parents to, whether or not their child has a learning difference, to help them develop these executive function skills so that they can make the best decisions possible when the stakes get higher as they progress in their schooling. So I'd say the learning is always happening since childhood, but ultimately in terms of focusing on the college process and course planning, extracurricular planning, I encourage a lot of exploration leading up to high school. I would say 8th grade is a good time to start thinking about things because you're planning your course schedule. You may be picking out a high school. And I would also say before that, even if you are considering going into a science or business field, make sure that you or you're giving your child opportunities to enrich themselves and advance themselves in math and science, because that course load is very challenging in high school, and if they're not prepared, they're not going to have that opportunity to take on that major or that interest in the future. So I would definitely recommend that if your child is showing an interest in math or science, particularly, to make sure that you're enriching them at an early age so that they can take the most challenging courses possible when they get to high school.
Now, that's excellent advice. I believe in your book, you mentioned something around not giving up and, trying different angles. So I think that's a powerful message. I'd love to hear it from you. Tell us a little bit about that. If you don't get in to your dream school or even your second choice school or whatever, what do you do?
Yeah. And so it's really hard. A lot of people really do take this process personally. So I do try to emphasize where I can that, it's not personal. And I wouldn't want somebody to get an admission decision and take that as, an evaluative statement on whether or not they can succeed. And a lot of times when you are somebody who is, in a high pressure environment, all of these sorts of news, when it's bad news, it can really make such a difference in your own motivation and your ability to feel like you can go forward on your goals. So I would just remind everybody that these decisions are not personal, that you have to stay focused on your goals, and if you can't find the path you thought you wanted to take, you have to take another path. So I would say if you're going to get attached to something, get attached to the goal but not the path. And getting into XYZ college is not a goal because it's not attainable without some kind of luck involved. So, and of course there's some luck involved in everything, but, let's say like you want to get, XYZ accomplished, in the next 5 days, that's an attainable goal. Maybe you don't reach it, but it's something more in your control. Getting into a college is ultimately not in your control. So you have to focus on the things that you can control and then do your best to let go of the things you can't control.
Right. And what have you heard from some of the students that you've advised over the years? Let's say not the ones who got into their top choice, and I'm sure you've helped a lot of them get into those top choice schools, but let's say there's some that maybe didn't get into their absolute number one top choice, but then they came back to you and said, hey, you know what, I'm having a great time, great experience. I totally forgot about that other school. I don't even know where they are anymore. I love it. Or maybe they're miserable. I mean, what have you heard post graduation?
Yeah, it's such a good question. A lot of my clients really do care about the brand name. So sometimes I'll get a student that comes to me, not necessarily somebody I've advised before, who just says, "Hey, I'm going to this really great school, but I really want to try for these other schools." And I say, why do you want to transfer? Can you give a justifiable reason? Like, oh, I want a better ranking. So there is a lot of that. I think sometimes people have trouble focusing on what's good about an environment when they think there's something better out there for them. Um, I think ultimately a lot of the times when people don't go to their first choice college, it's because of scholarships. So there's a benefit and a trade-off when you are um, making those kinds of choices. For example, I had a kid this year who got into Cornell and to Berkeley, and his dad really wanted him to go to Cornell, even though it would be more expensive. It was across the country. Potentially better opportunities there, the more robust alumni network and so on. But ultimately it was somewhat of a financial decision, and the child was actually one who was like, hey, we're going to save so much money if we just go and stay. I want to be in tech, and I'm here in the Bay Area, so why not do that? So ultimately those kinds of decisions are difficult because there are benefits and drawbacks to the choices that you make. Ultimately, of course, is everybody happy at the end of their decision rounds? Like, not necessarily, but the important thing is that whatever decision you get, you make the best of your environment going forward. And of course, you can always transfer if you have to, but hopefully you focus on doing the best you can where you are.
That's right. What about, I hope I'm not shifting gears too much, but what about grad school? Do you advise students on grad school?
We're actually just starting to develop a practice around medical school, because that's a really important decision point in people's lives, and it's a very complicated process. And I have advised folks on MBA, and we're looking at offering that again. It's very similar in terms of the story part, because you have to be really concrete, and then also make some kind of emotional plea to get into the school, obviously without being desperate. But there is a component of connection, whatever kinds of applications are doing, whether those are grad school or undergrad. And I know that from helping out with MBA career management sorts of things, from doing alumni interviewing like wherever level you're at, the storytelling and writing with impact is really important. So it's not so different. I know for MBA, at least when I was reviewing a few years ago, the importance was really on those scores as well, like even more so than for undergrad. It was like the scores really, really matter, as far as the GMAT. So certainly, though, the essay is becoming more important, and I know the GMAT wasn't always available right in the last year. So um, lots of changes again with that. And so the importance of writing is, transcends time and is continuing to develop in importance.
Right. I'm curious, has COVID, the pandemic, impacted the whole process in any way? I've read articles here and there, but I'd rather hear it from you because you're closer
Yeah.
to what's happening.
So the test optional was the biggest change, because a lot of people were putting in applications to schools they never would have applied for if they had gotten a low score. So people were just like, well, I might as well apply to Princeton, Harvard, Yale, because they don't need a score. Um, so that was a huge change that had ripple effects for um, what the competitiveness. Also, some people chose to defer from colleges in 2020. And so the admission cycle was very competitive as well this past year, because there were some spots that were being held from the past year's class. There were differences with international student enrollment. Obviously, international students couldn't really come, and they have been an important part of campus life, especially over the last 20 years, when the numbers of students were increasing at such big levels. Then they were kind of flattening, and then they just dropped off. So my hope is that with the vaccines becoming more widespread and available, that international students will return to campus. And I do anticipate we'll see more international students again this fall, but I think it'll take a little bit of time for that dip to recuperate.
All right. Before we wrap up, I mean, you've shared a lot of great advice, and highly recommend reading your book, which is coming out, I believe, August 3rd.
Yes, thanks.
Right. So that's congratulations, by the way.
Thank you so much. If you want to learn more about the book, you can go to getrealandgetin.com. You can sign up to be notified about when we have our book bonus material available, and little things I'll give away regarding the book. So definitely appreciate you staying in touch, and thank you for having me and to talk about the book and about writing today.
That's great. No, thank you so much, Dr. Legatt, and good luck with the book. Good luck with your practice, and good luck to the students that you advise, by the way. I know the season, I guess, is about to ramp up. When does it start to kick into gear for you?
So some of my kids are starting to write their essays now, which is a good time. A lot of people do wait till the last minute, and that's something we didn't really cover, but I don't advise waiting till the last minute, because a story that's really important and worth sharing is worth reflecting on before you write it. So make sure that you start early with your applications as early as possible, so you can brainstorm, get feedback, outline, and just have as easy of a process as possible.
Right. Speaking of early, I hope you don't mind me asking about, I understand, in your book, you write about Professor Adam Grant at Wharton. He applied early, decision to Harvard, and got in. How important, or how effective is applying early in terms of increasing your chances to get in, just to be totally blunt?
Sure. So in brief, there are a couple kinds of early policies. There are non-binding early policies, which are early action, and what they call restrictive early action these days. Now, when Adam was applying, I don't know that they had early. I don't know if they had early decision or early action, if it was binding or non-binding. Today, Harvard does not have a binding early round. And then there's the regular decision round. So the early decision policy is a binding contract between the student and the university, saying, if the university admits me, I will go and I will pay. Early action does not provide that kind of binding financial commitment. So when you apply, though, to a place like Harvard, they do have a restriction on, if you're applying their restricted early action, as they call it, that you can't apply early decision to other colleges, and you can't apply early action to private colleges. So definitely check those policies in general for all the schools you're applying to. That aside, the percentage chance of early decision, particularly, not necessarily restrictive early action, you do get a higher percentage of kids getting in from that pool, and it's a smaller pool. However, again, this is not a lottery ticket. This is a personal approach to getting into your hopeful dream college, top college. So you have to be really, really personalized in the early application, since that you're saying, I'm ready to commit now to you. Will you commit to me? And they want to make sure that they're picking the right people. So does it increase their chances from an odds perspective? Yes, but I don't like the idea of using odds, because I do think it comes down to more than that. I would encourage folks, however, if they do have a first choice college and they offer early decision, to definitely use that option, as long as, if you were admitted, it wouldn't present an undue financial barrier for you to attend the college if they don't give you the money that you need. And by the way, you can get out of the early decision agreement only for financial reasons. So it's possible, but you don't want to start getting other acceptances and then bargain, because then they'll probably withdraw their offer. So I'd say early decision is a good opportunity, but don't enter into that lightly just because of the percentages.
Okay, that's great advice. Dr. Legatt, author of Get Real and Get In, How to Get Into the College of Your Dreams by Being Your Authentic Self, which is coming out very soon. I've actually read it. I have an advanced copy, so thank you for that. And I highly recommend it. Extremely well written, very compelling, great stories. You talk about yourself, but you also talk about others and their stories. And I wish I had that book whenever I was applying eons ago. So thank you.
Thank you so much again for having me.
Great, thanks.